And today we're going to talk all about wholesaling pre-foreclosures. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. And honestly, if you're new to wholesaling, why it's extremely advantageous in 2023 right now to do wholesaling for pre-foreclosure. So if you don't know how to do it, I'm going to show you how to do it. It's much simpler than you think. I'm going to teach you the pros. I'm going to teach you the cons. And as usual, you get both sides of the story so you can make a decision what's a good fit for you. So before I jump into it, I have some current information that literally just dropped about 5 minutes before I got on this live. And I don't normally do this, but I'm going to go ahead and share it with you so you can kind of get a grasp of what's going on with the foreclosure. So as you guys know, interest rates are ticking up. The real estate market is really, it's teetering. The only thing that's really saved the industry in real estate is we started with historic low inventory levels. And honestly, it's the only thing that shocked the blow to what's going on with wholesaling. Interest rates are going up. They're actually going higher, as the Fed said. Jerome Powell, if you don't know him, get to know him because he seems to control the entire world. But we don't care at wholesaling. We have to understand what's going on. So I'm going to switch my screen here to an article we're actually going to read it together because it just came up. So this information, if you go to, I believe it's Atom Data, they have a lot of really cool information there. And if you want to find out what's going on in your market, that's a great place. Another one, if you guys want to get current stats, is just Google Redfin housing data, and you can pop it up there. It says here, U.S. foreclosure activity declines monthly in February. And just so you know, in January, it increased, but continues to increase annually. So if you look at it from a macro aspect, it's getting worse each month. So you don't need me to tell you that. You kind of see what's going on in the real estate market. So if we go through this, I want to highlight a couple things so you understand it. So foreclosure completion numbers increased 45% from last year. Now, remember, that's completion. It's a very misleading stat. So if you guys want to go ahead and read this, you can Google it all in there for you. It talks about the number of houses lenders repossessed, the major metropolitan areas. And here's where I want you to understand. With a population greater of 200K in February 2023, Chicago, you ready for this? 193 REOs. So we don't care about REOs. That's basically after the foreclosure happens. And foreclosure starts decrease monthly in 25 states. Now, if you look here, this is what really kind of jumped out at me. Highest foreclosure rates are in New Jersey, Maryland, and Illinois. Boy, I find that ironic, don't you? If you go on to look at the numbers, the increases, guys, they are staggering, some of the numbers. So they talk about Fayetteville, North Carolina here, Atlantic City, New Jersey, and it tells you about how many houses a foreclosure is out of every 2,500 houses. But if you look in here, Fayetteville, North Carolina, which I've highlighted as a wonderful virtual market, one and out of basically every 1,600 homes is a foreclosure. That is really, really, really big. So if you, guys, if you want to do the masterminds, just jump on there. I'm gonna be honest with you, it's pretty loaded right now. And I put the link in the comment. So we've had some technical issues, so we're working through them. But I want you to understand that this article is up. So for the long run, let me jump off of this. For the long run, foreclosures are continually to tick up. Foreclosures just don't happen overnight. It is a process. And basically, when people start losing their jobs, in my honest, humble opinion, that's when you'll see the most foreclosures. And guys, the one thing is we have a crazy unemployment rate. It's very, very low. It's almost sub 3%. But honestly, I think the government's using such old data. After the pandemic, everything has switched. What qualifies somebody being employed or not employed? I think the world has changed between working virtually. And honestly, I think the government's incentivized people to sit home on their butt and do nothing. But I'm not going to go too deep into that one because it gets me upset. Okay, so let's jump into it. So let's talk about it. So the first thing you have to understand, what is a pre-foreclosure? And it's literally what the word says. It's the word pre. So a pre-foreclosure, and that's what I'm talking about today. A lot of people mix it up with an actual foreclosure. So a pre-foreclosure, for pure definition, is when the bank is pursuing the homeowner that has a mortgage and letting them know you're getting behind in your payments. And if you don't take action, we are going to file a foreclosure action in your county courthouse. And on average, ready for this? You got 3 months to fix it, maybe 4 or 5, depending on how sloppy the bank is. That is the stage that we want to attack these. Once they file a notice of default, that basically puts them on notice. We are filing a lawsuit and now we're going into a foreclosure action. So if you guys have any confusion, put it in the questions now. I want to help you out with it. I am talking about pre-foreclosures. There's a huge difference working with pre-foreclosures and foreclosures, because honestly, the pre-foreclosure is the very beginning, and that's the spot that you can help people out the most and have the most options for the seller and honestly yourself. The problem is catching them way down the aisle, which there's not a day that's going to buy. You guys don't tell me. Somebody wants me to buy their house and they have an auction in like 3 days. I just got one last night. The auction is like today at 10 o'clock this morning. It's already done and gone. Honestly, I'm not talking about those deals, but I'll explain them to you. So you have to understand how that works. So if we know what the definition of a pre-foreclosure is, you just got to know how to get the list. And guys, of all the lists, this technically qualifies as a government list. This is the easiest list to get them all. Just ask for it. And most of the time you can get this stuff. Of course, I drink of water and there's no water around here. Hold on. Don't tell Zach I'm drinking water. He's going to have PTSD on that one. The list is easy. This list, I'm going to honestly, there's no challenges. It's extremely public. They can't hide the data. And for that reason, the huge advantage of pre-foreclosures is that you can get them. You have to get them as soon as possible. If you can get them first, it makes a tremendous difference on your success rate. So once you have the list, and honestly, it's easy. It's going to have the homeowner's name on it. It's going to have the address. You really don't even have to sort the list. You might have to skip trace it and go through truepeoplesearch.com and get their phone number or whatever service you want to use. But then you just have to select which marketing channel you're going to do to reach out to these people. And honestly, there's nothing better than a phone call. The old days, full disclosure, I used to go knock on their doors. I wouldn't do that anymore. I would just do reverse driving for dollars. And that's basically you take a yellow sticky note. Yeah, you can make it pink, you can make it green, and you stick it on the door and say, listen, I got a quick question about the house. Give me a call. It's Rick. I'm going to have a phone number on there. And that's it. So if you get the list and you had 30 pre-foreclosures on them, I would develop some sort of route. You can use a software, whatever you want to do. Use Google Maps, Apple Maps, whatever it is. We used to use MapQuest back in the old days. And go stick those notes on the door. And then they'll call you at your convenience. And honestly, it saves you a lot of time. The advent of Ring cameras has really screwed up door-to-door sales in all businesses, not just real estate. And in some counties, you can actually get arrested for it. So I strongly advise know your laws before you do it. There's something about door-to-door sales that works, but I grew up in an area where, if I didn't have a week or a month to go by that a vacuum sales lady didn't sit in our home, or an encyclopedia salesman, I had to sit there and endure all that with my parents. So it was kind of funny, but it works. That's why people do it. So you got to understand that. So pick your marketing channel. My favorite is always going to be cold calling and reverse driving for dollars. It's it, guys. It's the most effective. Honestly, mail just doesn't work on pre-foreclosure because they get enough nasty notices and yours is most likely just going to hit the garbage can. Those are the two sweet spots. Yes, you can do SMS. It's just, you got to find a way. The goal with SMS is convert them from a text to a phone. And so many of you guys try to sell people on via text. They are not your best friend. They're not your bro you hang out with or your best girlfriend. You got to get them on the phone because they don't know you and they're not going to do a transaction without actually talking to you. So now you have to identify the sweet spot. So I already kind of shared it with you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it out here and draw it for you. So where is it? I don't know why that is floating around there. Nice. Okay. Well, of course it's not going to cooperate. Okay. Well, I'll just tell you, how's that? So that's part of being live sometimes. So the sweet spot, as I said earlier, is going to be from the time the bank, most likely they're going to call them first and they're going to send them some sort of legal notice. And the goal of the bank is honestly get them to take action to catch up their mortgage. Most people that have either lost their job or in financial trouble will immediately get nervous. I know I would. So and when they do that, they want to reach out and get some sort of help to solve the problem. The problem is from the first time they get a letter up to about month 3, that honestly is your sweet spot, period. It is your sweet spot. That's where you want to go with it. And if you don't do that, I'm telling you, let me see if I can pull it up here. Okay, I think I got it. I didn't spill any water. I didn't spill anything, I promise. And Zach's probably watching going, what's he doing? Okay. So if I do this in months, and then this is your homeowner. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is in months. And this is the homeowner. So right here, let's do it in red. This is pre-foreclosure, guys. And this is where you want to be, because when they get behind on the mortgage, the numbers get stacked up against them. Attorney fees adds, court cost adds to the final number. And the longer they wait, the less options they typically have. My goal is always to try to pay the homeowner out to financially incentivize them to do a deal with me. But here's what I call the action zone. If I have someone in pre-foreclosure and I can catch them before like month 4 or by month 4, I'm in great shape. What happens at month 4? NOD, notice of default. This is when they start the official foreclosure. That means costs are going to really add up. And remember, if I had a payment of $2,000 a month, just add this up, 2, 4, 6, 8. By this month, you're already $8K behind. So it starts to get really ugly. And honestly, if you go all the way to here, it can wind up being $20K with court costs. So you can see why this area is a problem. Now, I want you to understand this. This is where you guys get a lot of your action, and it drives you nuts. I know it drives me nuts. And basically is right around here, the property is going to be auctioned. And what happens at an auction? People start knocking on the door, investors start walking around the property, and it freaks the seller out again. And they're like, listen, I know, Rick, you called me 6 months ago, but like, I'm ready to take action now. The problem is now I got to add another $20K, and they're already almost underwater. It becomes really ugly. And a lot of times, the only way to stop an auction is a legal maneuver. I don't know if I'm spelling that right. And it requires someone to pay an attorney. And honestly, it's not even guaranteed. People use like strategies like filing bankruptcy and all that stuff. I don't advise anyone to do anything. It's their house. It's a very advanced step to do that. And honestly, as a newbie, do not mess around in this section because it's a waste of time. They are the most motivated people in the world. Why? Because they have no other options. But the reality is, unless you want to catch up the mortgage, you can't even do a subject to at that point. And you've only got days to sell it. And you guys get calls all the time. And I'm here to tell you, most of the time you're wasting your time in those unless you find a local investor that's very advanced that knows how to stop these things, because there is financial risk and it's not easy to do. So this zone right here, just so let's do green. We haven't done green. I know this is a little bit sloppy. This zone right here is the denial zone. And what do I mean by that? Here's what happens is seller's like, no, I'm good. I'm good. They scared the crap out of me in the first 3 months, but nothing happened. And I'm not making payments, and I'm really enjoying this financial arrangement that they have. What they don't understand is the bank's attorneys are marching through the court system to try to basically take the house back and get him kicked out by the sheriff's office. But this is where a homeowner buries their head in the sand and goes, you know what? I'm okay right now. I'm not going to deal with it. So if you don't catch them right here, everything from this over is a pain in the ass. Now, you have an opportunity in the denial zone, but most people in that middle zone, the sellers, they have a false sense of security because nothing's happened to the property. They haven't got kicked out. And that's where it becomes a real pain in the butt. So guys, stay out of the denial zone, stay in the action zone. If you are new to wholesaling and you want to do with pre-foreclosures, they work very, very well because at pre-foreclosure, there's a million options, and honestly, the motivation's high. But if you let them go past that 3rd month, they get this false sense of security like, well, everything's all right. By the way, guys, I've met people sat in their house 7 years because the bank screwed up. But for the most part, depending on what state it is, your bank's going to move pretty quickly because they want to secure that asset to get their funds paid back to them. So knowing that going into it, that's where you're at with it. So I want you to understand your biggest advantage in wholesaling pre-foreclosure. Like, Rick, oh my God, that's scary. I'm here to tell you, man, if you catch somebody month 4 or before and they want to work with you, it's actually one of the most pleasant transactions you'll do. You're going to have to earn their trust and let them know that you want to help them. If you can communicate to that and get them to do a deal with you and actually try to offer them incentives by giving them some sort of money payout, because if they do it early, there's usually some sort of equity or something left. Worst case scenario, guys, you could switch to a creative financing deal. But let me ask you this. Go back to our chart here. If I can push the button. Do you want to do it here where maybe they're a couple thousand behind? Or do you want to come over here where they're 20K behind? Because to do a subject deal, someone's got to fund that 20K. And I don't want it to be you. So for that purpose, if you're new to wholesaling, catching somebody in pre-foreclosure is your greatest opportunity because there's massive incentive for them. They should be motivated, but the problem is once they get past that 3 or 4 month period, they wind up in the denial zone. And then all of a sudden, they're going to frantically call you at the end within 30 days of the auction, usually a day or two before, and go, Rick, I'm ready to do the deal. And you go, listen, there's nothing you waited too late. And they're like, what I do? It's beyond panic. It actually breaks my heart and I want to help them out. But to be honest with you, they kind of created that mess because they thought they were in control when the bank told them in the beginning they weren't in control. Now, I have helped some out of them, but I'm telling you, as a beginner, I would not mess around with someone who has 7 days or less on an auction. And honestly, 30 days or less, there is inherent risk. Someone's got to pay. And by the way, I usually ask the homeowner to pay for the attorney because my favorite is when they go, well, Rick, I can't afford it. I go, well, you haven't made a payment in 9-10 months. I think you can afford $1,500 if you want a shot at it. But you're going to upset the judge. You never answered any motions. You never showed up to court. You never hired an attorney. It is at best 50-50 putting up the $1,500. But I've had it go either way for me. As a newbie, I would not touch the very end unless you partner up with someone in your local area. And I can't do it unless you're in Florida, because if I go to Arizona or New York, it's very particular laws and you have to have local knowledge of how to get through the system quickly and get it done with a lawyer that you've done business for. And for that reason, I do not accept those on our JV deal. So knowing that, that's off there. So your advantage, you ready for this? As a newbie, this is amazing because I found this out by accident, is real simple. You have time. You catch somebody in pre-foreclosure, they strike a deal with you. Guess what? They usually need some time to find a place either for rental or move in with somebody else, whatever they're going to do. And they usually want some time to do it. If you catch them early enough, you can give them all the time they want. So on average, you have 2 to 3 months to sell any property in pre-foreclosure. Why? Because they actually need the time. And guess what you need as a new wholesaler more than anything? When you first get in this business and you get your first contract, you need some additional time to sell it because you might not even have a cash buyer's list. I never had one when I did my first deal, full disclosure. And it took me some time to go out there and find people. Now, if you have a great deal, within 30 days, you should be able to find a good cash buyer for the property. And I let them know, listen, it's in foreclosure and you might get a little bit more additional time, but you got to close it within 2 weeks or 30 days or whatever. Now, when you close on the pre-foreclosure, you take it to your title company. On average, they do take about 3 to 4 weeks to close because they have to get official court documents and they got to get a lawyer involved to settle the foreclosure to make sure it's all settled. So time is so valuable. You guys understand, like a pre-foreclosure, who else has 2 to 3 months to sell a property? The one technique in wholesaling that will give you that is pre-foreclosure. My biggest tip to you in pre-foreclosure is you've got to go with speed and chase the people from the first filing to that 3 months. I don't mess with them after the 4th month because they've heard every pitch in the world and they think they have it under control. And honestly, I get tired of, you'll get what I call foreclosure fatigue because they'll never make a decision. So listen, debate on why they're in foreclosure or not, it's really none of our business. But the reality, if you can't make a decision after 4 or 5 months, you're probably not going to make a decision until someone forces you to make a decision. And I don't want you to get caught in that denial zone, because this is the worst part, when sellers will lie to you and just drag you on forever. And you've got to know when to get out of it and let them know, listen, if you call me at the end, I can't help you out. So I do try to leverage them. And if I don't get a decision by month 4 or 5, I move on. And I tell them, don't call me at the end because I can't help you out. So, and guys, as usual, you got to create win-win. You will never, ever, listen to me, you will never, ever force somebody to do a deal with you, especially in a distressed property like pre-foreclosure. Either they trust you and they're confident in your abilities. Even if you haven't done a deal, the only thing you're selling is yourself. That's it. And if they like you and you connect with them and you can help them solve a problem, create a win-win and let them know, I want you to win and I want to win. If we both can't win, I'm just going to walk away from the transaction. Now, if they want $50,000 and there's zero equity in the property, that's not a win-win situation, and don't waste your time with people like that. By the way, so many people in pre-foreclosure, they think their house is worth $1 million. And as I showed you in the articles, it's creeping up every month. And the only thing, in my opinion, that saved somewhat of the real estate market is our low inventory going into the change with the 9.1% inflation. Absolutely nuts. So that is my presentation on pre-foreclosures. Guys, they are perfect, or if you're new for wholesaling, because if you can get someone to avoid the denial zone and the procrastination, their incentives should be very, very high to do it. It says here, what stages of foreclosure process Should we stop prospecting and acquiring at the listen, once there's something happens at the notice of default, and if they're not going to take action by month 4, they're going to you're going to be stuck in the friend zone for the next probably 6 months. And honestly, I don't want to sit there and be paired against every other investor. If it doesn't make sense for them, I'm not a good fit. But here's what happens. A lot of people in foreclosure, they think they're going to bid it out to the highest bidder. And honestly, it's a huge mistake on their part. And honestly, when they do that, they're acting like they're working with a realtor. And the worst ones are the ones that list it with the realtors, because the realtors don't understand about urgency, cash buyers, and how foreclosures work for the most part. And there's nothing I can do for that person. You can talk to your blue in your face. I just say, listen, if you want to move forward, great. I have a lot of other properties I got to buy. I would love to buy yours. But if you decide to wait till they evict you or do a auction, there's nothing I can do at that point. And I push, if they don't make that decision by month 4 or 5, I kind of move on. And the ones that constantly drag you on, it will never stop. So understand, you all know what a procrastinator looks like. Unfortunately, when they get in foreclosure, not pre-foreclosure, they think they're the authority on everything and they want the highest and best bid. And honestly, they can go get a realtor for that, because you can't play that game. Because if you do it, and I did it, they will literally waste your time, and they'll give you foreclosure fatigue, which I'm trying to have you avoid at all costs when they do that. So, wow. Emily said she downloaded 3,000 pre-foreclosures. That's amazing. So guys, remember, the best place to get your pre-foreclosure information is from your county courthouse. Everybody else that gives you is secondhand. Now, you can use the paid services, not a problem, through PropStream and Batch, but remember, they're getting it from county data. So if you want to be first in line, go to your county, and honestly, you make a decision how often you want to download that stuff. And then that's a great way for you to track foreclosures in your current market.